The only way a nation can determine and develop the sustainability of a standard of living, longer life expectancy, healthier environments, is you need to create wealth. And wealth is not a dirty word in this room. And the only true wealth a nation can have is in these three areas. You have to build something, you have to grow something, or you have to mine something. You absolutely have to recognize that these industries are important because they're high-paying jobs, and each one of those high-paying industrial jobs begets 3.5 other jobs. This is the only true wealth. So the only way for a nation to continue to sustain its wealth and its standard of living and its health, and then to be a compassionate country. Who is the first country there with a check in a tsunami for a volcanic eruption? We are, and the check's never big enough, is it not? But these are the industries we need to embrace, our industry.
Hi everyone, this is Ashlei Williams. I am the assistant editor with the Wholesaler magazine, and I am at my first PVF Roundtable in Houston. Dr. Donald McNeeley, one of our well-known columnists, and the president and CEO of Chicago Steel and Iron, just wrapped up our keynote speech. And before we kind of get into some recaps of what you talked about, can you first tell us why addressing this membership is important to you? Why take the time to come down here to Houston?
So first of all, welcome to your first conference. We're glad to have you here. And as you heard from my comments tonight, the economy needs to run with job creators. And if you look at this audience tonight, these are people from the industrial sector of our economy. And that's the heart and blood of the U.S. economy. These are the people creating jobs and making positive contributions. In addition to that, how generous is this group? They've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for scholarship to enable access to college for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it. So it's a great group to be with. So to get the nomination, you got to run far right and far left. And the moment you get that nomination, you got to make a beeline to the middle. Otherwise, you're not going to get elected in the national election. So one of the truisms, we call that axiomatic, a given that's no longer debated, is how are presidents determined? And the answer to an incumbent is we go into the voting booth when somebody's running for re-election, and we either consciously or subconsciously process this question. Am I better off than I was 4 years ago? If the answer is yes, cha-ching, you retain them. If the answer is no, you vote the bum out and you don't care who's coming in. The government has been buying our own treasuries at a rate of $85 billion a month for the last 2.5 years. $85 billion a month. And as soon as we think the economy is turning around and we go from Bernanke to Yellen, which is going to be a big yawn, more of the same, they started to back off of it because they think the economy is now getting legs. I believe it is. But remember, it went from 85 billion to 75 billion and the market tanked, and then it stabilized and the market's coming back up. They're going to continue to take it down every month or every meeting by another $10 billion. Be very careful, because when the government's not buying those T-bills, they now need to go out to the open market. So we do have inflation coming. Now I'll tell you, in our business, inflation's okay. What? In our business, inflation's typically good for it. Let me tell you why. And we all know the difference between a gross margin and a markup. So if you want a 20% gross margin, we're going to mark it up 25%, right? So you buy something for $100, you mark it up to 125. That's how you get your 20% gross margin. But when your $100 goes up, your costs go up. You don't pass that cost along dollar for dollar. You transfer the percentage. So if we see costs go up 4%, what we do is we pass along the 4% increase to our customers. So 4% is going up on $100 to you, 4% is going up on $125 to your customers. So here's what happens. When inflation happens, your costs go up, your resale goes up, your margins typically go up.
And overall positive notes on the economy, on how the industry is going to contribute to the economy. Could you kind of recap some tidbits? We will be doing a full in-depth of your speech, but just some of the highlights you want to make sure people know.
So one of the highlights is we've got this stalemate out of Washington, and as a result of that, people have been reluctant to make a decision. And the recovery has become so protracted that we've got this pent-up demand for the nation's infrastructure. So eventually we've got to reach that tipping point where we've got to rebuild the nation's infrastructure. And so we anticipate that 14, 15, 16 are going to be great growth years, not only for the nation, but also specifically for the industrial sector. And if I take that one step further, for the PVF industry. So we're pretty bullish about the economy going forward. Now I want to move to education, having laid the reality of politics. And I want to tell you how important your scholarship program is. college is getting too expensive. Don't think the scholarship money that you're raising, Danny, and everybody else in this room is helping defray costs. College is so expensive, it's making the difference on whether somebody goes to college or not. It is making an epic difference. I want to talk to you about a phrase that you're going to hear more and more. It's called STEM. And by the way, the housing bubble that imploded, the next big bubble to implode is student loan default. It's over $1 trillion. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. Science, technology, engineering, and math. Let's talk about this. How do we compete on the world stage? In the lower right-hand box, if we look at 15-year-olds, 15-year-olds score on reading 15th in the world, 23rd in science, and 31st in math. Now just stop for a moment. The interesting thing is, unless you're going to get a degree in science or math, be very careful because you may not be able to find employment at a magnitude of income to pay off your student debt. In 2014, they talked very modestly about a 2.4% growth. Remember, the economy is $16 trillion. People are forgetting how big the numerator is. So if you take 2.4% modest growth on $16 trillion, that's $384 billion in new economic activity. Just the growth alone would make that growth itself the 24th largest economy in the world. And if it's going to be followed by 3.5% growth and another 3.2, if you start to look at the compounding effect, we have seen in this protracted recession and this uncertainty coming out of Washington, a stalemate where nobody wants to make a decision and the nation's infrastructure has continued to age. Guys and gals, in a 36-month period, we are going to produce another $1.5 trillion of economic activity in this country. I share Maury's absolute optimism, but here's what you need to leave here tonight knowing. That $1.5 trillion spend in a 36-month period, 70.2% of that's going to be industrial spend. We're going to rebuild the nation's infrastructure. I'm telling you, if we don't make some money in the next 24 to 36 months, look in the mirror. Because these opportunities, those stars are now aligning for us. It's absolutely going to be bullish.